Between 1987 and 1991, a predator terrorized Melbourne's eastern suburbs. He broke into homes in the dead of night. He wore a mask. He whispered. He was meticulous, forensically aware, and seemingly untraceable. Victoria Police called him Australia's most dangerous criminal. The media gave him a name that would haunt Melbourne for decades, Mr. Cruel. And to this day, no one knows who he is. If you're fascinated by true crime stories like this, make sure you hit subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who'd want to hear it too. It really helps us bring you more deep dives into the cases that still haunt us. Now, let's step behind the crime scene and look at the terrifying story of Mr. Cruel. To understand the terror Mr. Cruel brought to Melbourne, we need to go back to the late 1980s. This was a time when suburban life in Australia was comfortable, predictable. Families left their doors unlocked. Kids played in the street until the sun went down. Parents felt safe tucking their children into bed at night, but in 1987, that sense of safety shattered. On August 22, 1987, in the quiet suburb of Lower Plenty, a family of 4 was asleep inside their home. The parents were in their bedroom, the young son in his, and the 11-year-old daughter in hers. She was not alone that night. Every member of the household was inside. In the early hours of the morning, a masked intruder slipped onto the property. Before stepping inside, he cut the telephone lines, a detail that would later become one of his trademarks. It was deliberate, cold and effective. With the phones dead, the family had no way to call for help. He entered quietly, most likely through an unlocked door or window, carrying with him a kit he had prepared in advance. He wore a balaclava to conceal his face, gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints, and he carried both a knife and a handgun. Once inside, he moved with control, not panic. He went straight to the parents' bedroom, woke them, and forced them to lie face down while he bound their hands and feet. At one stage, they were locked inside a wardrobe. The young boy was tied to his bed, restrained and silenced. With the adults neutralized, the intruder turned his focus to the daughter. She was blindfolded with surgical gauze and adhesive tape, gagged, and trapped the 11-year-old daughter for hours before the man finally disappeared into the night. When he left, he took nothing of monetary value. No jewelry, no cash, no electronics. The house was not burglarized. His purpose was not theft. It was something darker, something far more disturbing. For investigators, this detail would later prove crucial. They realized they were not dealing with a thief who acted on impulse, but with a predator who studied his crime scenes, who arrived with his own equipment, who eliminated evidence, and who focused on control above all else. The attack in Lower Plenty revealed the hallmarks of a pattern that would soon repeat itself. The cutting of phone lines, the use of a mask and gloves, the way he restrained entire families before focusing on a child, and the fact that he vanished without trace. It was the beginning of a series of crimes that would terrify Melbourne for years to come, and it showed that this was no opportunistic burglar. This was a man with a method, a plan, and the knowledge. Just over a year later, on December 27, 1988, he struck again. This time in Ringwood, another quiet suburb east of Melbourne, a place where families felt safe behind locked doors. At dawn, under the cover of early morning silence, the offender broke into a family home. He knew how to get inside without drawing attention. He moved with precision. Once again, he restrained the parents, tying them up, threatening them into silence, removing the possibility of interference. Then, with chilling calm, he went to the bedroom of a 10-year-old girl. She was blindfolded and gagged before she could scream, then, taken from her bed, carried out of the home, and driven into the night. For her family, the nightmare began the moment she vanished. For 18 hours she was held captive. Her memory of the experience would haunt her. The man never shouted, never panicked. He whispered constantly, giving quiet, deliberate instructions. He made her bathe, scrubbing her body with soap and water. Detectives would later understand the truth. This wasn't about hygiene. It was about forensics. He was erasing every trace of himself: hair, skin cells, fibers. The following day, she was released near Bayswater High School, dazed, traumatized, but alive. From that moment, police began to suspect the horrifying possibility the predator who had attacked in Lower Plenty the year before had returned. On the night of July 3, 1990, the masked man escalated his crimes once more. In Canterbury, an affluent suburb. He broke into the Linas family home. Like a practiced professional, he cut the phone lines before entry, ensuring no call for help could be made. Then he crept upstairs, silent, calculated. His target, 13-year-old Nicola Linus. She was blindfolded and gagged, just as the others had been, before being taken from her family in the dead of night. For 50 hours, she was held in captivity. Her later testimony to investigators gave chilling insight into his methods. He wore surgical gloves. He spoke in whispers, never raising his voice. He forced her to wash, scrubbing away possible evidence. He was careful with his surroundings, wiping surfaces he touched, leaving behind nothing. At one point, he even dressed Nicola in clothing he had taken from her own home. Another deceptive tactic to confuse investigators about what she had been wearing when abducted. After 2 days, Nicola was released, abandoned near a power substation in Kew. Her detailed account confirmed what detectives had begun to fear. This was no ordinary criminal. He had forensic knowledge, an understanding of police methods. He seemed trained. He knew exactly how to avoid being caught. And then came the darkest chapter. On April 13th, 1991, in Templestowe, 13-year-old Carmaine Chan was at home with her younger sisters. The girls were alone while their parents were out working at the family restaurant. A masked intruder, dressed in overalls and a balaclava, broke in. He carried a knife. He locked the younger sisters in a wardrobe, barricading them in to silence their cries. Then he turned his focus to Carmaine. Before leaving, he spray-painted a chilling message on the family's car. Payback, Asian drug dealer, more to come. Detectives quickly suspected it was a false lead, an attempt to divert suspicion, perhaps even to suggest gang involvement. For months, the family clung to hope that Carmaine would be returned alive, just as the other girls had been. But hope turned to devastation nearly a year later, in April 1992, when her remains were discovered in a shallow grave at Edgar's Creek, Thomastown. She had been executed with 3 gunshot wounds to the head. For Melbourne, the nightmare had reached its peak. Mr. Cruel was no longer just a predator. He was now a killer. The abductions and the murder led to one of the largest manhunts in Australian history. In May 1991, just weeks after Carmaine's abduction, police launched Task Force Spectrum. At its peak, the task force employed 40 detectives. They conducted more than 27,000 interviews, searched over 30,000 homes, and checked thousands of possible suspects. But despite the scale, the investigation faltered in critical ways. Crucial forensic samples weren't preserved properly. Some were contaminated, others were misplaced, or lost entirely. DNA analysis was still in its infancy, but these mistakes destroyed what might have been vital opportunities to identify him. Neighbors had reported suspicious vehicles parked near crime scenes. Others noticed unfamiliar men loitering for days at a time. Several sightings involved vans and utility vehicles. Many of these reports were dismissed or poorly followed up. For years, investigators failed to connect the 1987 Lower Plenty attack with the 1988 Ringwood abduction, despite the striking similarities in modus operandi. That oversight allowed Mr. Cruel years of freedom to strike again. Police chose secrecy, hoping to avoid public panic. But silence only fueled rumors. Whispers began, was the offender a police officer? Was he being protected? The lack of transparency eroded trust. By the late 1990s, Task Force Spectrum had been disbanded. The trail had gone cold, and Melbourne's most notorious predator remained unidentified. So who was Mr. Cruel? His methods suggested training. He cut phone lines, he wore gloves, he forced victims to wash, he planned every move. Some believe he was a police officer. Others suspect military or security service experience. Still others point to tradesmen, electricians, plumbers, technicians, men with access to tools, knowledge of houses and skills that matched his methods. About his psychological profile, criminal profilers describe him as intelligent, organized, meticulous. His crimes weren't impulsive, they were rehearsed, executed with discipline. He spoke softly, reassuringly, but controlled every moment. His goal wasn't chaos, it was dominance. He craved control. Why did he stop? 3 theories dominate. He died. Perhaps his life ended before investigators reached him. He was imprisoned, locked away for another crime, serving time while the Mr. Cruel investigation went cold. He chose to stop. He felt the net tightening, saw the media frenzy, and vanished deliberately. The last theory is perhaps the most chilling because it means he could still be alive today. Suspects over the years, dozens of men have been investigated, some with criminal histories, others who lived near abduction sites. Each time police thought they had their man, the evidence collapsed. No charges were ever laid. To this day, no one has ever been officially named as Mr. Cruel. Where is he now? If alive today, Mr. Cruel would be between 65 and 75 years old. He could be living quietly in Melbourne. A neighbor, a co-worker, even a grandfather, an unassuming presence in a suburban street. Why wasn't he caught? Because he planned for it. He targeted random families, leaving no pattern that police could track. He manipulated fear, then vanished when the pressure grew. The terrifying possibility remains. He may still be out there, living an ordinary life. The case of Mr. Cruel remains technically open, but after decades, the trail is cold. Victoria Police have faced harsh criticism for mishandled evidence, ignored leads, and lost opportunities. For the survivors, the scars are permanent. For Carmine Chan's family, justice never came. And for Melbourne, the shadow of Mr. Cruel still lingers. If you lived in Melbourne in the 1980s or 90s, you remember the fear. Do you think police missed their chance? Do you believe Mr. Cruel is still out there? Tell us in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into what really happens behind the crime scene.